Clerk, can you then read in the next communication, please?
Communication 421, Bill 129, amends Chapter 14 of the Hawaii County Code 1983-2005 edition as amended by adding a new article relating to hydraulic fracturing policy. From Councilmember Brenda Ford, dated August 28, 2013, transmitting the above bill prohibiting hydraulic fracking, or the practice by any other name for any purpose and banning any exemption to this policy.
Can I have a motion?
Thank you. Move to approve Bill 129 and file all related communications.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Ford?
Thank you. Council members, I refer you to Communication 421.1, and I move to amend Bill 129 with the contents of Communication 421.1. I need a second. Thank you.
Okay, so
Okay. Let me explain what this communication does. I inadvertently left out in Section 1 of this, I left out the word water. There's a lot of different ways that, or reasons that a company might frack, water being one of them, gas, oil, minerals, or the exploration or production of geothermal energy or related research, including geologic research. So all I've done in that section is added the word water, which it's my mistake, I left it out. In Section 2 and 3, I did this, the Section 3 language was removed and put into Section 2, as you can see on page 2, and that was at the recommendation of Corporation Counsel. We just felt it got better in that section. So basically, the only change is the word water. We're just relocating one section to another. That's all there is to this amendment.
do I have any other discussion on the amendment? Hearing none. Can we do a voice vote? Okay, all in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. And again, Clerk, there are two absences for you to note. Councilmember Yoshimoto and Onishi. Okay, so moving on to the main.
We're now on the main bill as amended. I understand that Senator Ruderman needs to leave, and so I'd like to call him forward. If anybody wants to ask him questions regarding the state process, let's take care of that now, and then I'll go into the bill itself. Senator, just push the bar at the bottom of the mic. Thank you. Identify yourself.
Russell Ruderman, State Senator, District 2, Puna.
Thank you. I'm going to yield at this time and let other council members talk. No? Okay. Senator, this council, well, maybe I should speak for just myself. I have great concerns. I know that you attempted to get a bill through and it got stuck in committee. Could you kind of explain that process, why these things don't come to the floor of the Senate?
Sometimes there are people in important positions that can kill a bill despite the support of a majority of the committee or even a majority of the body. And that's what happened in this case. There was the chair of the Water and Land Committee chose to not allow my bill to come up for a vote. In the course of reviewing the testimony over it, there was really only one bit of opposition to it, which came from a representative of a geothermal developer, IDG, who submitted a piece of testimony that was very curious in that it adamantly condemned my attempt to pass a fracking ban as absurd and unnecessary. And the same page says that that company has no interest in fracking. But that was the only testimony against my fracking bill from the entire state.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator. I would like to make a suggestion when you do your next bill.
Okay.
All of the bills so far, at least this bill, only is the land of the island of Hawaii. But you and at the state level control the waters around, and I think that's something you need to really take a look at because they might get banned on land and then they go right outside and drill into the ocean. So,
It's a very good point, Councilmember Ford. Thank you for pointing that out. And I have only very recently heard about the idea of offshore fracking.
yeah,
It's new
because,
under-
once they go up, if we ban it on land, they can still drill it, and all these different, anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for the senator? Sorry about that, Margaret. Pardon me.
Yes, Councilmember Kern?
Yeah, I don't have any questions for the senator. Thank you, Mr. Ruderman.
I have a question. Is it all right?
That's fine, and I would like the floor back after Ms. Ford is done.
That's okay with me. I just haven't had a chance to discuss the bill.
Exactly.
Does anyone on the council object to my asking him a question? Okay, I'm concerned on the home rule issue. I followed, you have that, it's actually a Senate resolution.
Yes, there was a mistake on my written testimony. I called it HCR. It's really SCR 123. I apologize. It's
Right.
just my typo.
And, okay, there's a reference in there to a possibility of DLNR Director Isla potentially doing some study. Have you heard any study or discussion? They wanted to have further discussions on this issue and potentially report back. Have you heard any action? At least I have not heard anything on this island of any further.
No, and that's a reference that was not discussed in committee at all. It was inserted by the chair of that committee when it was apparent that my resolution expressing concern was going to go through. I think she was asking Chair Isla and Don Thomas of UH to put together a report on the potentials of fracking in Hawaii.
Right.
I haven't heard of the progress of that report. I expect there will be some piece of paper before the next session starts from them.
And just for the public, I think the chair that we're talking about is my Senator Malama Solomon, so just to be transparent here.
Thank you.
Okay, so on the issue of home rule, I mean, we do, our home rule statute says that we have the right to create ordinances to protect health, life, welfare, and private property. I see that is what we are doing here, protecting the property rights, the health, and the welfare of the people. Now, when this goes forward and someone says, hey, it doesn't matter what those kids down in the county are doing, sort of do you have any comments or how sort of dealing with this on that level?
Well, I think it will send an important message that, first of all, the concern is real, that Hawaii County cares about home rule and protecting its own resources here and our own health. I think it would be much harder to counteract that if we make the strong statement of banning fracking here. I think it would sort of cause all the other dominoes to fall. But to my mind, the important thing is that any state regulation, there's no state regulation whatsoever now. And any attempt at state regulation might be blocked by the same special interest that blocked it last year. So I think it's a very crucial opportunity to exercise home rule, because when you look at it from a statewide point of view, it's not just Puna that is disparaged and willing to be sacrificed over there. It's the whole big island, So it's appropriate, I believe, for the county council to take this action to protect an imminent threat that's only facing this island at this time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yield.
Wait, I have a question.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today. My question is, do you know of any other, are there any other regulations that would be triggered if a company was to use fracturing in their geothermal operation? I mean, my understanding is that right now that's not part of the process, but if they were to, or if another company wanted to, would they have to petition for some kind of a permit, or what would be the process?
As I understand it, they'd have to get the same permit that you would get for any drilling operation. It wouldn't be separate from the kind of permit you get for a water drilling operation or an exploration drilling or a geothermal drilling.
And that would come from the state?
That would come from the state DLNR. DLNR does have control over mineral resources. But there's no expertise regarding fracking there. In fact, it's the DLNR that recommended to me that I change my bill to a ban, because I had suggested a regulatory process. They said, we don't have any way of reviewing this. Why don't you just make it a ban? So there's no special process that a fracking proposal would trigger, and there's no expertise on the state level. And by the way, I'm sorry to interject this, but when we read about fracking concerns around the country, the places where it is under control are the places that are highly regulated and carefully monitored. And we have absolutely no regulation in this state.
So in those places, they do not issue permits, or they?
No, there are, I understand there are a few places where it's carefully controlled and monitored and regulated, as opposed to anything goes sort of places which also exist. Mm-hmm. And that regulation is key to protecting, the environment from the effects of fracking. We don't have any regulation in this state.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, Ms. Yap, you still have your light on.
Oh, sorry.
And Mr. Kern, you were next.
Well, I was, the way I understood it is that we were asking questions of Senator Ruderman, and then Brenda was going to get into discussion and talk about her bill. After she got into it, then I would like to speak.
Okay. I didn't have a question for him. I wanted to make a statement too. No, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll wait.
So Brenda, and then Sendo, and then you.
Thank you. First of all, let me give you a few comments. My bill is not just about geothermal, although that's what most people in Puna fear based on the history for the last 30 years. It's far more pervasive than that. It covers water, and by the way, I talked to the chief engineer at the Department of Water Supply. They do not use fracking. He was adamant, not interested in doing fracking. Okay, but on the mainland, they do it for oil, for gas, could be for minerals, and obviously geothermal, which we have here. But I just wanted to let the public know that this is not just about fracking. It's also not just about Puna, because I've been telling everybody for a year, almost a year now, that, at least 9 months, that the next place they want to start drilling is in Kona, on the backside of Hualalai was the last thing that I heard. And they have been doing exploration up there. And what that consists of, I don't know, but I don't think it involves drilling, but I couldn't swear to that. So let me just explain that, as the Senator commented, there are absolutely no regulations in the state on fracking. The state has the legal right to issue the permits for geothermal exploration, but that does not include fracking. There are no legislation on fracking at all, and there's no legislation at the federal level on fracking, period. No place. The only place that is controlling fracking are some local communities or states or municipalities of some type around the country. It behooves us to get this bill passed before the legislature steps in at the state of Hawaii, because we don't know what they're going to do. And I'm really quite fearful with the number of bills that have passed at the state level taking home rule from us, that this is one where we can't afford to do it. In the bill, you know, that 4 pages or more about all the findings and purpose, the purpose statement, the objectives that my bill things. But if you go to page 5, where the bill actually starts, and that would be the only portion that would actually be in the code, and I did the definitions. I've done a couple of things in my research on this. I got a lot of help out of Puna from a lot of the Puna people, and I appreciate that. I did a lot of my own research. I got a PhD in geology to work with me, and I also have Mr. Bill Hante from Corporation Counsel. Come on up, Bill. Yeah, you lucky you. I worked with Bill to clean up a few errors that I had, so we think we've got a pretty good bill. As Bill comes up, one of the things that was been a couple of comments on was that the fines that I set were too low. First of all, I copied this section out of the building code, and that's the way it was, $1,000. And Bill, I'm going to ask you, and if not you, Lincoln, so I want Lincoln to hear this too. We set it at $1,000 because that's what it is in the building code, and it's $1,000 per day, and it's also $1,000 per violation that's listed on the notice of violation. And Bill, I'm a little concerned because I would love to have this be $5 million per violation, but that's not legal. And I think $2,000 is the maximum I can do for misdemeanor. And would you explain the difference between a misdemeanor and other types of fines? And this would be fast because it's a misdemeanor. We'd have to go to court, I think, for the other stuff. But anyway, go ahead. Please introduce yourself and advise the council.
Again, good afternoon. William Brahanti, Deputy Corporation Counsel.
No, he's not going to help. You're on your own.
As a former prosecutor and now currently serving as the Corporation Counsel, I may have to defer to Mr. Ashida as it relates to the distinctions between petty misdemeanors, and serious felony offenses as the fines are related to that.
Mr. Ashida, come on up, please. I want the public and the council to understand why we do fines at a certain level. And the fines are listed at the very top of page 7.
This is the language from the building code that she copied. Then here's her. This is her language right here.
I have page 6.
Yeah, starting with administrative enforcement.
Top of page 7.
Okay. Wait, I have the most current draft. What are you talking about?
That's the overpasses. This is the amendment.
Okay.
So it starts with administrative enforcement.
Give me 1 second, Ms. Ford, okay?
While they're looking at that, I want to go and just briefly mention the penal enforcement. If the county cannot get the perpetrator of evil, shall we say, under control by these particular fines that Lincoln will be talking about, then we can go to the court system. And that's when things can get very, very tough. But let me know when you're ready, Lincoln.
Okay.
So there's two remedies for us.
Oh, I see. You're talking about the section regarding the penal enforcement.
No, I'm talking about the administrative enforcement, which has the $1,000
Right.
fines at the top of page 7.
Right.
I believe those are misdemeanor fines.
Well, technically no, because if you're calling it a civil fine, then it's civil, it's not criminal.
Okay.
Criminal would require much more due process.
Okay. All right. So this is a civil. In section B, it's $1,000 for each violation specified in the order, and then it's also a civil fine of not to exceed $1,000 a day. Can we raise those numbers to something higher? Because there's been some concerns expressed about this.
My understanding, maybe Bill can chime in, is I believe those numbers were taken from the existing building code.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes.
So, you've, I think by virtue of you adopting that building code, you adopted those fines. So my, off the cuff answer is, you can pretty much do what you're not wedded to setting it or being limited to 1,000. That's my take on this. Bill, something,
Is that
you have a
because
different
it's
take
not
on
because it is a civil fine and not a misdemeanor, a criminal type thing?
Well, I think what you're getting at, from what I'm hearing you when you're referencing the criminal law, if you're going to call it a misdemeanor or petty misdemeanor or what have you, HRS sets the maximum allowable fine under state law for those. So in other words, you cannot, if you were to, for example, in the penal enforcement section, create a misdemeanor or what have you, you can't say, okay, misdemeanor and upon conviction you get fined $1 million. That's illegal because state law has already preempted and has jurisdiction over that. But on the civil side, Bill, you correct me if I'm wrong, because Bill's been working at this with you for
keep the fractures open to allow whatever you're trying to extract come out if it's some kind of a fluid or a gas. So that's a real problem. And the toxicities that are going on and being discovered on the mainland have truly, they're overwhelming the population. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Did it ring? I'm sorry. I'll yield.
Yes, Mr. Kern?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill is obviously about a specific type of technology. It has relation to, could have relation to geothermal, obviously, and that's the concern here. To me, this isn't talking about geothermal as it is about a particular method in which being used, particular method in which is new, mostly hearing horror stories in the mainland. I support this bill. I do not think that we should have that type of drilling method here on this island, where it is so unique and we have so much potential. And if we do something like this, who knows what that impact could be, and the negative impact that could be that's almost irreversible. I'm not a proponent or opponent of geothermal. I think it has potential to be done right. We have seen it be done in a different way. And with there not being any regulations, that just makes it that much worse. So we can't, to me, we can't have this be a process in which some company could use. Regarding the fines, I too think the fines are too small. I think there should be some type of metric so the fines are based on the scope, because it has to, like Mr. Belhante said, it can't be excessive. Somebody with a $200,000 home is different, let's say $1,000 a day between somebody drilling a well that could be $10 million well, just one well alone. I think the fine should be able to be pretty darn large, in my opinion, just because of the scope of that type of activity. To me, there needs to be a metric to weigh out, because if the fine isn't large enough, it's like you say, it's a business decision that companies are making, and they might just go ahead and do that. So again, there's a lot of things going on out here on the island. Look at the things are changing a little bit. Look at our ocean. I mean, look at the activity with the sharks that we've been having lately. I don't understand what's happening exactly, but it's definitely things are happening. I just don't think we should be drilling into our INA and fracturing it and causing problems that we may never be able to change. And we're 2,000 miles out here in the Pacific, and I'm born and raised on this island. I love this island. I don't want to go anywhere, and I certainly don't want to be stuck on an island that's had this type of activity that could cause massive negative effects. In the future, more research, more understanding, higher regulation, it's a different conversation. We have that conversation at that time. But until then, we should take care of this now. So I don't really have anything else to say. I support this. And let's move forward. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Poindexter?
Yeah, since you put this bill together, which I am definitely supporting, all the research that I've done, and I'm looking at pros and cons, and it's just all bad stuff that I'm reading. I can't find anything that we would benefit from. I mean, I read about the large amounts of water that they need for fracking, and then the potential for contamination of our drinking water aquifers, and then the effects on the air where this is going on, burning eyes, sore throats, and other illnesses. Why should we take the chance on our island? I mean, there's no need for that. People have testified about other ways for energy, sources, and we need to start looking at that. But we don't need that to survive on our island. We have so much other things that we can do, and this is just, to me, we would be putting our people in harm's way, and even our island. And if we would allow this would be so disastrous, because I don't want to take the chance on that. It's not worth it. So thank you for bringing this forward, and I am supporting it.
Councilmember Iligan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to call forward Director Kanuha. I just have one question, Director, and it's a two-part question. With the passage of this bill, are there any existing operations that will be affected? And if so, how will they be affected?
You know, that's a good question. I really don't know the answer to that. You know, if there's anything that's described here. The way this bill is structured, the enforcement would kick in when there's, you know, violations related to the bill. And if the bill is banning any operations that involves or gets close to this activity, you know, the processes for any of these operations to happen would have to have some kind of a permitting process, and this basically says, you know, there's nothing. I mean, it's just not permitted. But the question of how it would affect, you know, any drilling operations, you know, obviously we don't have anything going on related to gas, oil, or minerals. So the only one aspect would be those related to, you know, any water drilling activities. So that may be something to think about in terms of fine-tuning when this bill takes effect, and whether or not there's any grandfathering provisions to, you know, operations that are already permitted or already going on.
So at this time, we don't really know. But thank you for answering that question. I've heard a lot of horror stories about fracking, as you all know. This is a bill that Puna wants to support, and I see the whole island wants to support, and I will also be supporting this bill. Thank you.
Any other, Ms. Eo?
Thank you. Yes, I too will support this bill, and I wanted to thank all the people that have worked on this, Senator Russell Rudderman, Ms. Ford, and my fellow council members for stating their positions, and all the people that came forward, and including the voice of the Native Hawaiians and people who want to protect our resources, both for cultural practices and for sake of the environment. So I think we need to be very careful. We live on a very vulnerable island in a unique situation, and some of these practices that are happening that are affecting the mainland would affect us even faster and more noticeably. So I think we need to be very, very careful here, and although I don't totally understand all about this, I can feel that this is a good thing that we make a statement for our county at this time, that we don't want to see this type of technology used here. And hopefully we can make some kind of impact on the state as well. So thank you very much, everybody, and I'll yield.
Mr. Kanuha?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I bring up Director Kanuha again? I'm not going to go into too many details, but